Hey guys, it's Corey from the LG channel. Life is good. Thanks for tuning in again. I appreciate all your comments and your subscriptions. Of course, if you haven't yet, please subscribe below, and you'll enjoy all the other videos that I have to offer, along with this video that I'm going to talk to you about today, which is what programming language should I learn first? Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question, right? If you're looking to get into IT, that's a pretty loaded question. But it's interesting because I've worked with new people and newcomers to IT, interns, people that were trying it out and just sort of dabbling in it. And usually, most of the time, this is if not one of the most common questions that I get is, okay, Corey, well, what coding language or what programming language should I learn first, right? Well, that's a pretty loaded question, like I said. So I'm going to try and answer that question in three parts of this video. The first being yes, knowing how to code or knowing another language, quote unquote, programming language, or even learning how to script is valuable. So let's separate from coding from scripting, and then more importantly, queries, querying for data. Okay, so to get back to the language and what language is most important, um, I'm gonna say the most lucrative. So let's base this on perhaps ease of learning, and then three categories: ease of learning, most lucrative career path, and then practicality, like practical usage, right? Because I think there's a place for those three. That's pretty common to group things into those three categories. So knowing that, the top three that I'm only going to talk about in this video, and then some other stuff, is probably JavaScript, .NET, and Python. Okay, JavaScript, .NET, and Python. And why do I say this? Well, because in my career, in the last decade, even beyond, actually, even before my career, I was using Python. And that's why that made the list, because Python to me has stood the test of time. Okay? And Python allows you to do a lot of things, but it is a language. Okay? It is a binding language that you code in. Okay? There are libraries, there are extensions, there are IDEs and editors and things to make your life easier inside Python, just as there is in JavaScript or .NET. So you might be familiar with Eclipse, right? In Eclipse, you can fire it up and start a JavaScript project really easily. In .NET, you'll be using Microsoft Team Foundation Server and firing that up, right? And for Python, you're just going to be using Python, the Python libraries, right? There are editors for Python. PyCharm is one of them that I'll get into. I'm not going to get into it, but editors will basically make your life easier. They have helpful sort of extensions to coding, like color coding, the syntax, and squiggling the syntax when it's wrong. Suggestive type ahead, where you can quickly type lines of code and call lines of code that are really gibberish, jabberish, and you can type ahead to avoid having to type all this mundane stuff out. So that's really nice for editors. But regardless of this fact, what should I learn first? The most lucrative. Okay, so the most lucrative, I'm gonna say, is to know all three, right? That's what I do. I know all three. So when you know all three and you have a niche in one or the other or whatever, you're going to be highly employable and highly marketable and quite valuable if you legitimately know how to do JavaScript, Python, and .NET, because you can simply jump into way more problems than somebody who doesn't know that language, right? You're just going to do better. Like, picture yourself, use this word language as a concept. What language should I use? Like Spanish. If you're primarily English speaking and you are going to a Spanish speaking country and you know Spanish fluently and your friend does not, you go to a restaurant. you're likely going to have more success than your friend because you know the language that they're local and speaking of, and they do not. So same thing if you go into a company, right? You start at this company, they've got one project that's doing Python, and all of a sudden they need another JavaScript programmer, developer, tester, whatever, somebody who can write JavaScript code or read JavaScript code or debug JavaScript code. And you know both. Well, guess what? You have got another opportunity waiting for you right there. And that's my experience basically, right? So the most lucrative is knowing all three of them. But if you can't know all three and you had to just choose one, I would say you would want to choose one since you're new that is going to get you a job quickly or employably, to allow you to be employable, right? I'm going to go on a limb and say JavaScript, although I really do like Python. But Python I'm going to classify at the top of the class for easeability and usability, okay? Python, you can like write tests, you can write web UI tests, boom, right away, super easy, with minimal code. I'm not going to get into examples. I will put some courses out later to get you started with these things, but there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube and other training sites. I'm not going to mention any specifically, but look for the training. Just do it, okay? This is my advice to you. Instead of asking what programming language should I, try all three, okay? Write the same program in all three. Write a calculator that can add and subtract. Start there. Just do it, okay? Get into some code. Go to Git and check out some Python code and some JavaScript code and fix some bugs and some defects and get into the repository and see other people's code and look at examples. That's the best way to learn, is to start doing and fixing and working with it with your hands, like Play-Doh, right? When you were a kid and you wanted to play with Play-Doh and make something, you didn't just stare at the instructions. You actually had to grab the Play-Doh and mold it and start working with it. That's the best way to go about this, right? Just start doing it. That's my advice to anybody that's looking to get into IT. Just start doing it, right? But what's better than actually knowing a coding language? So if you're a beginner, I recommend Python first. That's easy to get into. JavaScript is fairly easy. And .NET is easy too. They all have their advantages. Object-oriented programming is key to know in IT, so any exposure is great. But what's even better, right? What's better than knowing coding is knowing logic and thinking logically and being able to structure queries, okay, and scripts. So scripts will basically leverage the syntax of the coding language and binding libraries. Queries will allow you to search for and look up information, okay, or data from a database. So a SQL query. So knowing SQL is huge. Knowing relational databases and understanding how they're put together and knowing how data flows throughout the system from conception and ingestion and creation, create, read, update, delete throughout the system, through each of the layers of networking, physical, the networking layer, the physical layer, the all the different layers, the UI, the presentation layer, how it actually makes its way to the database and how it gets transformed wherever throughout the system and the integration, and how the messages are sent and received, and how it's actually ultimately finally displayed to the user on the screen and the UI and visually. Know how data flows throughout systems and know how data is stored and updated and deleted and read. Because if you can understand that, you're going to be very valuable, okay? Because data is key. Companies cannot operate without data, okay? I'm not going to get into specifics, but I have built a nice little niche, knowing data and knowing and being trusted with data. Not only that, so build yourself a niche, whatever it is. It might be SQL, it might be, but know how to query for data, because no matter what you're working on as a developer or a tester or anybody in IT, or maybe even in the business world, being able to get your data quickly and accurately is super key. Okay, it's paramount basically. So I'm gonna tout data. Data delivers a solid career in IT. Okay, that really, if you can get into the data side of anything and prove and talk the talk and walk the walk about data, and right now the huge thing with data is let's see. There's no SQL databases like MongoDB is huge right now. But knowing an Oracle database, a SQL database, a relational database, any of that stuff is going to be huge for getting an IT job. And if you can prove that through maybe sample work or a project online or a Git repository, prove it, do it, show it, right? Teach it. Teach to the person that's trying to get you a job how you went about getting your data, throwing it up on the UI, and coding everything, right? Now, you might say, oh, I didn't mention HTML. Well, HTML is great, and CSS is great for the presentation layer, but that's just a small piece of the puzzle. I almost think that like knowing HTML is a like you should know